Good morning, everybody. I am Elizabeth Bernhard, and I am the Executive Director of the Manufacturing Growth Alliance, also known as MGA. MGA is a membership-based organization that provides services to help Michigan manufacturers build smart, lead strong, and establish a pathway for future growth. MGA is the only association in Michigan that is exclusively dedicated to the needs of Michigan's small to mid-sized manufacturers. Our services drive solutions to make Michigan manufacturers the most prosperous and competitive in the nation. Today, we'll be joined by MGA partners Amber Westendorp, Capital Project and Portfolio Manager with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, or MEDC. Amber is with the MEDC's Capital Access team, and she is here today to provide education and guidance on the MEDC's collateral support and loan participation programs. Also joining us is our partner, Rodney Parkkonen, the Senior Business Strategy Manager with the MEDC. Before I turn it over to Amber and Rodney, I ask that you enter your questions and comments into the chat box. We will respond to questions as they arise. And in addition, near the end of the presentation, we will adjust your settings so that you can unmute yourself and ask questions personally. With that, Amber, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you. Thank you so much for putting this together and for having me today. As Elizabeth mentioned, my name is Amber. I am the Capital Project and Portfolio Manager on our Capital Access team here at the MEDC. I have a couple of programs that I think would be great to go over and mention, so I will go ahead and get started. So a little bit of background on our programs. You might have heard SSBCI out in your networks. SSBCI is the State Small Business Credit Initiative. Back in 2011, the state of Michigan received SSBCI allocation from the federal government. That is what has funded all of our programs that we have. Back in 2021, as part of the American Rescue Plan, they did a reauthorization of SSBCI. They called it SSBCI 2.0. That has since been approved, and the state of Michigan has received that funding, and that's continuing to fund our programs. As part of this presentation, there's two loan enhancement programs that I wanted to mention today. That is our collateral support program and our loan participation program. With our collateral support and our loan participation program, we are eligible to support real estate, furniture, fixtures, equipment, and working capital lines of credit. We cannot do passive real estate, and we are really focusing on companies that have 750 employees or less. Both of these programs are intended to work directly with your lender within their bank policy and their framework for commercial credit. So they will make all of those decisions on that end. With each of these programs, we can provide up to $5 million to an individual borrower, and we can support loans that are $20 million or less. Just a couple of things to mention: we can't be on the same loan as SBA, USDA. We can be a part of their overall credit package as long as we're on a different note and for a different purpose. And this does have to be new lending exposure. With our collateral support program, we can support up to 49.9% of the loan amount. So this is a gap filling mechanism. We can provide support on the collateral shortfall. We do that by placing cash into the bank with a deposit agreement tied to that. The cash would be held and pledged as collateral on that loan. And that's for as long as we're needed. So we can be on there for the duration of the loan, or as the loan is amortizing down and you get in a good collateral position, you can always kick us out of the program. There's no fee to do that early. There is a fee to use the program. This is 1% to 2% at closing, and then 1% annually. And this would be on the portion that the MEDC is providing and not the overall loan amount. Next up, I'll give you an example. I'm sorry, wrong slide. So here's an example of where we've used the collateral support program in the past. This was on a term note where the real estate ended up coming in a little lower than what it needed to for the loan amount. In this instance, we provided 31.6% of the loan amount in cash collateral in order to provide the needed note to the company. And you can see in this one is an example of a line of credit that we supported. We provided the full 49% of the loan amount. By being able to do this, the bank was able to raise their borrowing base a little bit higher to provide a bigger support to the company on that. Moving on to our loan participation program. This program we can provide up to 49, we can support up to 49.9% of a credit facility. On our end of the participation, we are sometimes able to forego the receipt of interest and defer the principal for a set period of time on that note, on the MEDC portion only, up to 36 months. This is case by case basis. We would work with you and your lender on that. And this program is really intended to help deconcentrate the bank if needed. And we can also reduce those debt service demands for a short period of time for the company. This has the same fees as the collateral support program. So 1% at closing and 1% annually on there. Here is an example of how we've participated in the past. We did a 49.9% participation on this note, and then we gave up our interest for 9 months to help with the acquisition of equipment, their installation during that period of time. This here is a list of all of the lenders that have used our programs, both the collateral support and loan participation program. Any lender is eligible to use our programs. So your bank, credit union, or your CDFI, your community development financial institution, each can use our programs. If you don't see your lender on the list, that's okay too. They don't have to do anything ahead of time in order to use our programs. They're eligible to use our programs. And I would always be happy to chat with them if you're talking to your lender and they're not familiar how our programs work or they've never heard of them. I would always be happy to jump on a call with them. So the application process to use our programs, you would work directly with your lender to obtain financing. And then the lender would contact the capital access team if additional loan support is needed and they think it would be a good fit for either collateral support or loan participation. The lender would apply directly to the program and we would work directly with your lender in order to use the programs and set up a structure that works. And here's my contact information. You can write that down and contact me if you ever have any questions in the future, and can take any questions or comments that you have at this time. See, there's one in the chat.
Great, thanks, Amber. I'm also changing the settings for everybody so that you are able to go off mute and ask questions if you would like to. Okay, Amber, are there any restrictions around industries that can participate in these programs?
There are. So right now, any industry is eligible to use our programs for loans 500,000 or less. If the loan is over 500,000, we do have target industries that we're focusing on. Manufacturing and is one of those target industries that we're focusing on for larger loan amounts.
And then I did have some inquiries from a company who is participating in the cannabis industry. They work with hemp and CBD. Would they be a potential participant in this program?
We currently aren't able to, just because it's still not legal at a federal level and these are federal programs.
Great, thank you. And then what about company size? Are there restrictions around the size of the company, either in terms of employee size and or revenue?
Only employee size, and we're targeting 750 employees or less.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a question, would you provide collateral support for software purchases?
Yes, we would. And we support tech companies as well. So we can definitely support that.
Great, thank you, Mary, for the question. And Tracy says that she's unable to speak during this meeting. However, I can use the chat. Great. If you have any questions, Tracy, we welcome them in the chat box. Any other questions that we have?
Amber, I have a question, more of a confirmation, I guess, but for companies that are working with a lender that was not on that list on a previous slide, is it the company or the lender that would reach out to the MEDC?
We work directly with the lender. So usually it would be the lender that reaches directly out to the MEDC. I have taken a lot of inquiries from businesses as well. So if you're working with your lender, I would definitely be happy to jump on a call with you and your lender to talk about our programs, to make everybody more familiar and see if the need that your company specifically has is a good fit for our program.
And this program can work with any lender, right? Not just those that were on that slide, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then what about timeline? How long does it take to move through the process to receive funding? And are there time restrictions? For instance, when will this funding expire?
We don't foresee this funding expiring. We're still using the funding from 2011 up until we receive the new funding. As we receive funds back, we recycle it into new projects that are out there. Any interest and fees received also get put into new funding projects as well. For timing, it usually takes 6 to 8 weeks from start to finish with working with your lender.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we have a participant who has gone off mute. So let's pause for a moment. If you'd like to jump on in, go right ahead. Okay, hearing nothing. There is another question in the chat. Is a new startup business, in this case, a mobile grocery market, qualified to utilize these funding sources, or should they inquire about another phase to begin?
Sure, we can support startups as well. As long as your lender is comfortable lending to a startup, then yes, we can support that.
Great, thank you. Other questions either you would like to add into the chat or go off mute? You're welcome, Tracy. Amber, can you provide some additional examples of especially manufacturers who have applied for these loans and taken advantage of them? Can you walk us through some examples and how these programs have made a difference for them?
Sure. We have seen this program recently be used a lot for construction notes, maybe where the company has reached full capacity, they're expanding, they need to add on to their facility, but the real estate just doesn't support the cost of that, especially right now with the cost of building supplies. So we've helped a lot with those lately on a draw to term note, where we would be supportive on the draw term and then also the term note once the construction is complete on that. We've also seen it on maybe a working capital line of credit where I know some manufacturers have the lengthy receivable time frame if you're working with a larger company and the bank might not be comfortable with that. So we've supported lines of credit for that sort of thing. And then especially right now with supply chain issues, we've helped with that also.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And how many companies do you typically support in a year? What's the average annual amount that you contribute?
Oh, I would say probably about 50, if not more.
Okay.
For these two programs.
Great. There's a question. Do you have a one-sheet handout that you can provide on these programs?
I do. I can send those over. Do you want me to send them to you, Elizabeth, and then you
Sure.
can send them out?
Yep, that would be great. And Yeah, and do you have a URL that they could go to as well that they could quickly put into the chat box, for instance, and they could access it that way?
Yeah, if you go to michiganbusiness.org, and then our services page, capital access is out in there, where you can view all of the information.
I'm muted. At the end of this event, the recording will be shared out with you for those of you who registered. I'll also make sure that you get the fact sheets in your email.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thank
And
you,
it's-
Rodney.
Elizabeth, I have a question. This is George Singos from
George.
MMTC. Hi, how you doing? That's for Amber. Amber, I apologize. I think at the beginning you mentioned it, but if in our case here, a manufacturer has some type of grant or some type of funding from the state, did you say they could not apply for this or they could?
So if they have a grant that's separate from what this loan would be for, then they would definitely be eligible to use our
Okay.
program still.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There's another question. Would an existing barber shop in Detroit qualify for these funding sources to improve business, repairs, etc.?
Yes, that would qualify also. With that industry, we can support a loan 500,000 or less.
Great. Other questions, either that you'd like to go off mute or add them to the chat box? All right, can I be made aware of any existing grants that I might be able to qualify for? Rodney, Amber, any thoughts there?
In my area, we don't have any grants. We only have the loan enhancement programs. I'm gonna pick on Rodney here. Do you know of any grants out right now?
You know, a lot of it depends, Tracy, on your industry and some of those things. I think it might make the most sense. I can include my email address in the chat here. If you want to shoot me an email, we can talk a little bit more offline about your specific business and what might be available, if that works okay.
And I can also add that the MEDC has funding source to support Michigan small to mid-sized manufacturers in their Industry 4.0 technology implementation grants. And if we have any manufacturers in attendance who are looking at improving technology efficiencies through Industry 4.0 adoption, you can reach out to me and I can give you some information on those grants. So I will put my email address into the chat box. Any other questions? So Amber, if a company wants to find out more and they don't know where to start, what would you say their first step is?
I would encourage you to first talk to your lender to see if there's something that they can do to help you with the lending that you need. If they're unable to help, bring up our programs, reach out to me, and we'd be happy to help.
Great. And do we have any other questions from those in attendance today? And Rodney and Amber, is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation?
I don't think so.
No, then on my end, Amber, great job. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So thank you everybody for joining us today. As I mentioned, today's presentation has been recorded and we will, once it's edited, we will get that sent out to you via email. I also want to ask if you are interested in finding out more about those Industry 4.0 technology implementation grants. We are hosting another webinar in partnership with the MEDC and with the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, MMTC, as well as Automation Alley on November 10th at 3 o'clock. To find out more about both this webinar that's coming up on November 10th about these implementation grants, you can either go to our website or you can contact me directly, and I will also put our website into the chat. With that, thank you all so very much for joining us today, this short and sweet presentation. And Amber and Rodney, thank you both so very much for your time and for being here
Thank
today.
you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.